Okay, in this video, I'm gonna do a breakdown of this render right here. So what this is one of the Spotify loops for Illenium, which I did a few weeks ago. So basically, like when you go on Spotify and you listen to a song, sometimes you'll see a still picture, and then sometimes you'll see like a short looping video. That's this. This is like the short looping video for, I did a bunch of the stuff for his album, but it's just one of the ones that I'll break down here. So this, before I started this, I really wanted to stay kind of true to that. To me, like this is like the classic Illenium style. It's actually by this guy right here, Stuzor. So this dude right here worked on the Awake album cover, this one. So here's some of his other renders. You can see it's actually this album cover is based off of this render he did here, which is just awesome. So I wanted to include like that type of vibe. So, you know, like reflective floor, lots of volumetrics, that deep orange circle, and then, you know, like dark environment. And also like the lighting here is split. He does this pretty often where it's split between that like really deep orange and then also there's like a balance of like pure white somewhere. So I wanted to have that. Here's some of his other stuff. So yeah, this dude, I'll link his page below. Yeah, big inspiration for this one. He's helped me out a ton. And yeah, let's talk about what's going on here. So here's the blend file. It's pretty much the exact same as that video, except it's just a little bit less saturated here. I did do some post work, nothing crazy, just like boosted, I think, saturation, contrasts, maybe some other small things, but it's pretty much just this. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is, yeah, that main thing, the big moon thing in the middle here. So let's go over this and the lighting and all that, and then I'll talk about the rest of the environment after. But this is kind of the core center thing here. So let's look at what is going on here. A lot of people have asked about this style of lighting where it's like this rim light type thing around like a circular object. I've done that a few other times. So if I hide this, here's what's going on. So there's a few things going on here. It looks kind of complicated, but I'll just show you. It's very simple. If I just kind of break this down piece by piece. So the main thing that's lighting everything up is, if I just bring this back, is this thing right here. So if I move this around, you can see it's just this ring, this emissive ring. So we're in cycles, so emission textures are going to be lighting up everything. And so if I look at this, what's going on here is just regular principled shader, so like the default shader. Let's just bring this down. The only thing is I just turn on the emission to orange, that like Illenium orange right around there-ish. And then the emission strength is just cranked way up. And then I'm also using a noise texture to run into the alpha. And if you noticed in the video, there's kind of this little bit of just like pulsating and like variation in where things light up and some like bright and darker spots that are kind of moving around as it gets animated. That's just this right here, which is just a noise texture. The W, aka like the seed value, is just being animated. Just like two keyframes, one at the beginning, one at the end. And then that's how you get this like noisy weirdness going on. So that's just kind of going through like this. And then that's how we're getting like, some of it's just getting brighter and darker in certain areas. And then when that gets, you know, run through the volumetrics and like, I don't know if there's a glare node, but there might be. That's how you get that kind of pulsating natural, whatever that is. And then, yeah, that's just going through color ramp just to really crank the contrast of that noise. And then that's just running into the alpha. I could have run it to the emission strength and do the same thing and then just use a math node and multiply the strength, but this works fine. All the other settings here are default. It's just very, very basic shader. Let's just get out of here. And you can see if I move that away, just kind of hide it, there is some other stuff going on here, but the main thing that's like lighting up all that orange stuff is that ring right there. But let's look at what else is going on here that also has an effect. So I'll just actually hide that thing I just showed you. And let's look at these other pieces here that are doing whatever this outline is. So this glow, this is not like a technique I do very often, but it just, I don't know, I was messing around and it looked cool here, so I just went with it. This is from a pack of ring lights, of like kind of bokeh type, I don't even know what, like lens flare type things. Let me find the pack and I'll just kind of show you. So yeah, I found this random pack on Etsy a while ago. I don't go on Etsy very often, but for some reason I was on there and I just saw this pack and got it. It was pretty cheap, but it was just cool, like circular bokeh shapes like this. And Sometimes I just throw that on top of like random renders, but in this case I actually used it inside the render. Like normally I'll put it on in post in Photoshop or whatever, but in here I'm using it like in Blender. So I just took a couple of those, put them onto an image plane. So if I actually look at just one of these, so you can see it's just a circular mesh by just adding like a, if you want to get this shape, you just add a circle or a cylinder, just delete the other faces, but circle, fill it with a face, inset, and then just delete that interface, and then there you go. So that's just on there. You could also just use a plane because we're running it through the alpha as well, so it's the black parts of the image will just get removed anyways, so you don't really need it to be a circle anyways. So anyways, that is just slapped right on there, and then that's what's giving it this kind of like emissive glow around the outside. So it's just, you know, we're getting the glow from like one of these like glowing things, and that's just what's giving it that nice outline. So it's not a, like this is kind of a weird technique. Like normally you'd probably do this with just like that emission material I showed earlier on an actual mesh, and then use that, and maybe just use like a glare node or just add some kind of glowing in post. But in this case I just did it, like kind of faked it right on here. So here's the settings. It's that picture, just this right here, running through a color ramp, through curves. I don't know why this is here. This color ramp is doing nothing, or I guess it's doing something. Whatever that's doing, it's just making some of it a bit darker, I guess. And then, oh, I guess it's just set to ease instead of constant. Yeah, or instead of linear. So it's just, yeah, making that a little bit softer, running it through the curves to make just the overall thing a little darker. You know, I could have done that in the color ramp too, but whatever. And then that's just running into the alpha. So that's very important. Run that picture into the alpha basically, and then make the emission like whatever, you know, color you want. I can make it blue if I wanted to. The point is, glowing thing on a plane into the alpha, and then set the emission to whatever you want, turn up the strength, and there you go. You've got something like this. And I just did that a couple more times and like layered them on top of each other. So you can see if I just kind of bring this through here, it's just like that thing, but just a few times layered over itself in, you know, to get like a full complete circle. I didn't like this, like how you can see kind of the bokeh down here, but as soon as you bring in this other circle, that kind of goes away. So it's totally fine. And that's, you know, that's that right there. So if I hide all this bokeh stuff from here, it's not that different than if I just had that original emissive ring around it. It's just kind of adding a nice kind of glow around the outside, and I thought it looked cool, so it's in there. Let's talk about this moon thing in the middle. This is something I've been doing in a lot of renders recently, is just having like a 3D moon. So what this is, if I just isolate this, let's go to material preview actually. So it looks good from the front, but as soon as I rotate to the side, you'll see this thing is not actually like a good quality like model or anything. It's actually just a picture of the moon, and that is projected from view, from like the camera's view, onto the entire just front side of this sphere. As you can see, as I rotate it, you're gonna get that stretching because that is like, from the angle we projected at that, it's like totally on the side. The thing is, it doesn't matter in this case because the camera isn't moving. I wasn't planning it for it to move, and you're just seeing it from one side. So this works completely fine here because you're not gonna see any of that. So this is just a regular image from Unsplash. The way I got all this, you know, the normal map in here to get all this extra texture on top of that is this free add-on right here. I've talked about this before, Deep Bump. So I would use this in, I did a video on using Midjourney to generate textures and also height maps and normal maps in Blender. Basically, you just download this free add-on here, Deep Bump, and then you can just press this button, like click on the image you want. So in this case, like this one right here, and then you just click this button, generate normal map. It'll do some AI thing, and then create an entire normal map out of just any picture. So I was using that in combination with Midjourney before, but in this case, I just needed a normal map of this picture of the moon. So that worked really like super well. Just came in super handy just to get a quick, you know, just to add quick amount of like bump and detail to this. And there you go. Instant normal map for free. So that's that. So yeah, this works, you know, most of the time when you have a moon in your render, you're probably not going to be like rotating 360 degrees around the moon. So you can get away with this technique a lot, but if you need if you're going to be rotating the camera like fully around it, obviously you'll have to find another way to do this and get a proper texture and like unwrap it properly. But in this case, this is like totally fine. There's no other settings. It's just that like this thing here running into the color. Roughness is kind of default, a little bit higher. That doesn't really matter. And then no other settings changed except for just that normal map. One thing with this is when you generate this normal map, make sure you save this. So what I do is I just hit image, save as, and then it actually defaults to just the project you're in. So I just save it straight away there. And then if you don't do that, it might disappear and like glitch out. So just save the image and it'll stay in the project. If you don't save it, it'll like disappear as soon as you press the add-on again. Okay, let's talk about the rest of this environment. Let's get out of material preview. What is going on here? I'm not really sure what's happening with this. It's just kind of this model from Quixel. It's just, what's actually going on here? Yeah, some random like landscape thing from Quixel, I don't know. In a lot of those old like Stuzor Illenium artworks, there was like lots of, maybe not the Illenium ones, but definitely in the Stuzor, just his own work. He does a lot of these like rocky landscape things that are kind of intersecting with a reflective floor like this. So I wanted to have a little bit of that. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on in the final thing, so I'm not going to go too in depth into this, but it's just, I got it from Quixel Megascan, so you just browse around, find some rock or some landscape or just any earthy type model, slap it in, nothing crazy, it's just intersecting with the floor. Speaking of the floor, let's talk about this. This is the classic like render floor where it's just like roughness map on a dark material. For some reason, a lot of people have like struggled with this type of thing right here. This is actually very simple though. It's just a roughness map. I'll show you where to get this in a second, but just any roughness map like this running into, I'd like to run it through a color ramp to just dial in the exact range of roughness I want. And then that's running into the roughness input on the principled shader. No other settings change except for the color is just dark. So that's there, that's off. And you'll notice with this, it's actually not metallic. It's not, this is not up. In this case, it's not, it doesn't make that big of a difference. It's so dark that you can't even really see if I make it metallic. But if you have it like any brighter and then you turn that up, you could get like a similar result. I just like to do it this way where this is off and then this is dark. It's not a big deal. Like just try messing around with it and see what works best for you. But that's the settings I use. I usually don't make it metallic, even though it does look like it is metallic. It's just dark and the roughness is low is all. So I got this roughness map from Quixel Bridge. I'll quickly open this up and show you, but inside of Quixel Bridge, there's a whole section of just roughness maps, or just like they call it imperfections. So if I just go to the surface imperfections section. So if you're into making like this type of art where there's that reflective floor is like a big part of it, this is like a dream come true here, because there's just a bunch of these textures in here which you can download. Just all sorts of grungy surfaces where you can just take, it's just a roughness map. You just slap onto a plane like this, and then there you go, 4K, and then instantly done. So that's actually sweet. And this is a very easy technique, but it's also just that core like Illenium Stuzor vibes that I really wanted to have in this one, so that worked out really nicely. And then when you have something emissive over that, that just looks, it's just so much fun doing that. It's always going to look good having an emissive glowing object with that floor underneath it. Just, yeah. This is very important too, volumetrics. So if I just hide this, that makes a huge difference here. You can see like that's a big part of this type of style, is very, quite thick volumetrics. And it just makes it look good. It always looks good. So here's how you do this. I showed this a lot on my channel, but it's just, you take a cube, scale it up over the entire thing. Like your whole scene is now underneath this cube. Go to this orange square tab, scroll down to viewport display, and then here where it says display as, if you can see that, display as, change that from textured over to bounds, and now you'll just get a bounding box of that cube. And then all you do is you throw on a volume scatter or a principled volume shader onto that cube. So here's the settings I'm using. These settings as I always say, will be different in every scene that you work with, depending on how big it is, how bright the lights are, where things are placed, what just happens to look good. So don't try and copy these exact numbers, but what I generally do is turn the density way down to 0.0 something, and then turn the anisotropy up a little bit. This anisotropy just means the higher you turn it up, the closer the glow of the fog will be to the light source. So if I turn it way, way up, it's gonna get really bright, really close to those lights, and everything else will be kind of like a bit less thick volumetric. So you can see if I turn this way, way up, that looks kind of cool actually. That glow will be like more centered around where the light originates from, versus if I turn it way down, it's kind of just spread everywhere. So I have it up a little bit, not too crazy. It actually looks kind of cool having that up higher. I almost wish I did that, but that's what it was at for this. Color is just whatever, default. And then in this case, 0.02 for the density, it looked good, but again, that's gonna change depending on what you're making. So just play around with different values. Sometimes I go as low as like 0.00 something, like another zero in there. Sometimes it's a bit higher. Just mess around and see what works best. And let's talk about these particles in here. So if I look at this, there are moving like spark or like dust type particles going on here. This is probably smarter to do in post and like just take a video layer of moving particles and throw it on in After Effects. In this case, I just did it in Blender because I had this particle system already set up from other projects, and it was really easy to just take that, duplicate it in here, and then it was just already set up. So the particles in the scene are actually moving around as a particle system in Blender. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend doing it this way most of the time unless you already have it set up for some reason. But it's just regular emitter particle system, a few thousand particles. There's a turbulence force field. So I don't know where it's, oh, here it is, this thing. Yeah, turbulence force field, you just hit Shift A, force field, turbulence, and then it'll automatically affect the particles. The strength is at 2, the flow is up a little bit. The flow just means it'll kind of, how do I explain this? Kind of like adds a bit of stickiness or like just kind of dampens it out a little bit. You'll see what that does when you mess with it. So it's up a little bit, and then, yeah, that automatically affects the particles. And then you just turn off gravity. So in the particle settings here, scroll down to field weights, and then you'll see here gravity. So by default, they'll just fall with gravity. If you just turn that to 0, it'll just be weightless, and then the turbulence will just take care of all the movement for you. So very simple, just to recap. Emitter particle system, set the object to just anything. So in this case, it's just a emissive sphere or something. I don't even know, you could use a cube if you want. Turn off gravity, add a force field, a turbulence force field, change it to like around 2-ish, and then that'll take care of all the movement for you, and you just kind of slap that in wherever it looks good. So in this case, it's a plane emitting it, just kind of everywhere. I don't know, just for some extra movement and stuff going on. This also works really nicely for just if you have like, what is it, like not sparks, but like just other random dust particles. So in that case, I would do the exact same thing, except change the emitter object to be just maybe a translucent or white sphere or something. And that way it'll look just kind of like nice dust magic particles or something, whatever you want. Yeah, let's talk about these here. So these archways, I don't know why I keep using this exact model in all these Illenium artworks, but that's in there again. This is from my fantasy asset pack. If you want to get that, there's just a link in the description, which will just take you to a page. It's like $150 at this point course that comes with a bunch of like asset packs, a bunch of models, a full course, a bunch of other stuff. If you want to check that out, you can go and do that. You don't have to though. If you don't want to spend any money, like don't click that, that's not for you. But if that is something you're interested in and you want to get these exact models that I'm using and a bunch of other stuff, that is there if you want. And yeah, so these are just models I made a long time ago, threw them in here. They looked good on the side, just filled it out, looked nice. And then this spotlight at the top here. In my last video I posted, at least, I don't know if it's, actually at the time of recording it's not posted yet, but I think it will be out by the time this video is. So somewhere on my channel, I did another video on using spotlights and lighting like this. This is just, there's what it's doing in the scene if I take it out. So it's just really nice to have kind of a balance between, like this orange here is very intense, and it's almost too much if like the entire scene is just pure orange. So it's really nice to balance that out with just some pure white, in my opinion. So, and you know, this guy here, Stuzor, has done that a lot in his own work, like balancing out that intense orange with that like nice white, just pure white, nothing fancy. Always looks really nice, balanced out with that orange. So I did that here, where it's just a regular spotlight. This is just set to, you know, whatever this is, 22,000 watts. Not insanely bright. Like I've had in my other scenes, I've shown like using like 2 million or, you know, crazy amounts like that. But in this case, I just wanted it to be just a little bit there, like not anything crazy. Radius is pretty high, so it's, you know, fairly soft. That's how, you know, if I turn this way down and the blend way down, you're gonna get this cone from the light. That looks horrible. So the radius is up, and that'll just soften that out a little bit. And then also the blend is up, and that'll soften it out even more. So that's the settings there. Again, just pure white, saturation 0. And then there we go, placed right over the moon there, just to get that nice, whatever that lighting setup is. And then yeah, that's just running through volumetrics again. That makes a big difference. And I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else in here. It's a pretty simple scene. Like if you want to do this Illenium Stuzor's type style, it's not like, there's nothing that complicated about it. It's just like, keep it clean and organize things in a way that looks cool. And like, yeah. Oh, one last thing here is this guy in the middle. This is a photo scan of me sitting down. So I don't know, that's kind of cool that I'm literally digitized and then put into like this Illenium render. But you can just use whatever model you want. So again, like in these old Illenium ones, there's like this dude sitting here like in this meditative pose. Why not have myself doing that in there? I think that's awesome. And yeah, I don't think there's nothing else in here. It's just like some basic models, a floor with like a basic texture. You know, keep the lighting nice and clean, and then there you go. The world settings are like fully black, like there's nothing in here even. So if I take out those two lights, like the orange emission and the spotlight, it would be pitch black. What about the camera? I'm using the panoramic lens, but you know, it's not crazy wide, so if I had it on perspective, it wouldn't look that different. But that's there. Depth of field does not matter. So yeah, that's pretty much it. In the compositing, there's like a bit of glare node, a bit of lens distortion, not anything crazy. And that's it, you know. This was for the Spotify canvas again, so I had to render it at 1080 by 1920 vertical. Anyways, hopefully that was insightful. Hopefully that was interesting to see behind the scenes of this kind of thing, of you know, client stuff. Go and watch this video right here if you want. Hopefully that was useful, and I will see you in some other video.